Hi there, and thank you for clicking on this video. Um, just wanted to say thank you all for waiting on me while I got my outside IRL stuff sorted out. We're going to be talking about the teacher quest today. Pretty simple. Um, I don't have any footage because I've done it on both my accounts, but I'm seeing some stuff going on with like YouTube and whatnot, and I guess I'm going to comment on something that like people have already talked about. Uh, And honestly, it kind of irritated me a little bit, so maybe this is more of a rant for me. I do a lot of teaching at work, like a lot of training and whatnot of new people. So teaching is something that is near and dear to my heart. And it's definitely something you kind of have to have, like, not necessarily a passion, but at a minimum, you have to have a tolerance for it. Ideally, a passion, though. And it does kind of bother me a little bit that people are talking about how good the teacher quest is. That quest was not good. And I'm going to leave it as polite as possible because we're all about the toxic positivity here. Even when it's bad, say it's good, right? So let's go over some of the issues. This is going to be constructive feedback, but I'm going to be blunt. So I guess if you don't want to hear a rant video, you know what to do. But the teacher quest was supposed to be like the first, I don't know what you call it, like the first 101 level or 101 level bits of education on modding, the first foray, if you will, into the modding tutorial, or developing a modding tutorial for Warframe. And it's kind of hard to agree with the statement that it was a good quest. The people that I've heard have said that it's a good quest are thinking in terms of like their LR something, MR30, thousands of hours in the game. And they're thinking, well, it's better than nothing. When teaching somebody, you're not really teaching based on your actions, you're teaching based on a result. And the result is comprehension and the ability to, like, the pupil, the person that you're teaching, to be able to use and manipulate the information on their own. If you're teaching principles, they need to be able to utilize them on their own. Ideally, like without strain, like not really needing like cheat codes or anything, or like a guidebook or like an outline or something. But with the 101 intro level stuff, it's more about think like building blocks for like little kids. You need the basics. And more importantly, they need something that works. You need to give them something that is effective in all circumstances. You can teach nuance and, Warframe modding can be kind of more like an art than a science in some aspects. But ultimately, it's all going to boil down to math. If you really want to learn it, it's straight up math. Like, it's a big, like, word problem, if you will. You've got your multipliers, you've got your additive and multiplicative, damage increases, you've got your multi-shot, average crit multiplier, you've got your crit tiers, you've got fire rate, you've got faction damage, status damage. You've got all of the headshot increases, like headshot weakness shots. It's not always a headshot. But you got weakness bonuses, then you got the interaction with crit on weakness bonuses. You've got all of these, different ways of gaining damage in Warframe. And the teacher quest covered none of it. The only thing, if everybody remembers, it's only been like a couple of weeks, that it taught you is that the corpus need to be shot with electricity and magnetic, which isn't true. Even though I'm using magnetic and toxin right now, I could be killing these guys with like radiation or gas damage or anything else, honestly, because of how strong they are. Now, the elements get significantly more important, obviously, the higher the enemy goes, and it seems to be with each update that becomes less and less important. Like we recently are post damage attenuation rework. So a lot of the enemies that were originally kind of tanky are like not so much anymore. So, you know, grain of salt. But the fact is that teaching has a burden attached to it. Good teaching, I'll say that, where you're not done until comprehension in the pupil is achieved. It has nothing to do with, oh, I did the thing, I'm done. You know, if they don't know how to do it, fuck them. Which is kind of what the teacher quest seems like. It's like, oh, I did the thing. You can't say I didn't now. Because I don't know of any enemy besides, say, like, I don't know, Prophet Taker, where it really requires you to have a specific damage type to do any damage at all. Like, they even messed with, like, the elemental weightings, or the IPS weightings, to exaggerate the example. And the fact is like, that's not how damage works. Like, when you shoot, you can see it originally, when you shoot the Corpus drone or whatever it is, you're doing 10 damage. Except the weapon that we're using has like a base damage of like 28 or something. And then you add an element and you go up to like, I think it's like 30 something. And then the drone changes and you still have the electric element weighting on the weapon, and you go back down to 10. I don't know of any scenario where that combination of events would happen. So they had to have probably, because the teacher quest was done by an outside company, which I'm not too happy about. Why would you let another company be your handshake to somebody else? Like the New Bro quest is specifically for New Bros. You know, statement of the year. Like, this is how you're greeting the new players. Why wouldn't you want this quest to be freaking awesome? Like, it either cover all of the information quickly, or cover it slowly in a comprehensible manner while explaining the nuance. Like, there has to be a return on what it is. But the fact is that for the quest, I'm not really sure what they were trying to go for. The fact is that it didn't explain the basics of modding. Like I say at every build video I do with a new player, or a weapon that a new player can get their hands on. What the base multipliers are. Like, people have even said, like, oh, I'm padding the video. And it's just, well, I realized a long time ago that new players aren't going to search, even though I have like 600 videos, new players aren't gonna search through, you know, all of my videos, because I was thinking back then, like, oh, like my videos will be like a resource, like I'll build up a library or something like that, and that's not the case. Right, wrong, or indifferent, you just, if you want people to learn, you got to say it every time if it's worth it to say it. So the quest didn't even cover like basic 101 modding. Like at least at a minimum, provide an example of what a good build is. They could have used the weapon that we got, the little triple tap rifle, and they could have given us like a fully formatted out weapon with at least enough forma for the new bros. Like the game would have like maybe registered that I was a specific level and been like, oh, he doesn't need the forma. But for the new bros, like a serration, split chamber, crit chance, crit damage, and a fire rate mod, you know, the basics, and explained how the average weapon in Warframe is going to need a base damage, multi-shot, crit chance, crit damage, and a fire rate mod. As like and even on weapons that don't need that combo, it's still a good combo to put on if you don't know what you're doing. Like, especially if you're doing like the regular star chart, there isn't a single weapon that a new player can build where that is a detriment build-wise. So it's just, it is what it is. The modding, you can sit here and talk about like people being dramatic and whatnot. We all saw the video. But the fact is that anything, we can all agree that it is a good direction, but the execution was completely off. As mean as this is to say, I do kind of feel like they just need to throw the quest out and redo it. I don't know whether there was like a communication issue between DE and that new that company they used, or whatever it was. I don't know what the deal is, but the fact is that the information needed to be transferred wasn't transferred. They didn't even bother saying a lot of it. Like, how hard is it to say you need a base damage mod, you need a crit chance mod, you need a multi-shot mod, you need a crit damage mod, and you need a fire rate mod. And they could have done a bunch of other things to like really sweeten the deal a little bit, like introducing players to like the tabs, like the loadout tabs, where it's like label this one corpus and they make you mod it correctly in the modding screen, or label this one Grenier and label this one Infested. So the players are aware that like, hey, you can use these, and more importantly, when you're forming a weapon and you've only got one, modding for your generic core mods while you tease out a higher end build is a really safe way to go about it. Like, say you don't have a Riven, or you're not sure if you want a Riven. There are lots of times, even now, when I get a new weapon, I will form a base damage, multi-shot, crit chance, crit damage, and fire rate onto a weapon, and hold off on the last three while I test the build, or test the weapon and see what I like about it. Like, is the recoil too much? How does it feel? Should I go deadhead? Is it more of a spray and pray weapon? Okay, I'll go multi-shot. You know, just build it according to how it feels. It needs to feel good, regardless of whatever the math is. Otherwise, we would all be running, you know, deadhead builds. But the fact is it didn't address any of this. Maybe the quest line needs to be broken up into like a 101, where it's like a starter, like you're on Earth, and like once you get to the start of Steel Path, and then maybe another one post Steel Path, or at least in the 102 where it's like the start of Steel Path. That seems like a really good spot, especially post arbitration with the galvanized mods. Show them what the build likes, talk to them, at least mention how there are conditional mods where they might not show their damage immediately, which is important for like condition overload builds, because for a new player, and especially with auto mod being as ridiculous as it is at times, a acolyte mod melee set build for like combo counter, the build in the stat screen looks significantly weaker than what it is. And I kind of wish there was like a toggle to be like, oh, what's my crit chance when I have 12x Berserker, 12x Weeping Wound, and Berserker stacked? Like, I should be able to at least get those, or at least see or have a toggle for condition overload. Like, what's my base damage when I have 3 statuses, or what's my base or my condition overload damage, or my condition overload influenced base damage when I have like 5 statuses. Like, we could just have a toggle, you know what I mean? And like, I would probably personally set it to like 5 statuses and just ignore it after that, because most of the time you're running with IPS, a combo element. Like, I've got magnetic toxin right now, so this Mark 1.1 Bratton, totally not prime, has 5 statuses on it. So setting the galvanized damage mod to reflect the damage for 5 statuses would be really fucking helpful. And the game could calculate my damage based on that. Especially because it's hit scan, it'd be really simple. Or once you get to Steel Path, where it's like, oh, what's my damage when the Arcane stacked? You know, you could really narrow it down. But that would be more of like a 102. But it's just bros, that was not a good quest. Like, have any of you talked to a new player that's played that quest and then asked them to mod something? They still can't. Which is the hallmark of a bad teacher. Like, oh, you did the, like, it's one of those things where it's like, oh, if you have a class of 30 kids and one of them doesn't understand the course curriculum, that's the kid's problem. But if the teacher teaches the class and all 30 kids don't understand the curriculum, then it's the teacher's problem. So it's just, you gotta be careful when thinking about this stuff, because we're thinking about it and like you're mentally filling in the gaps of where this information, this little bit of information goes, and going, well, at least they're covering some stuff. Which is true. It is better than nothing. But to say it is a good quest, it is a good teaching experience, it teaches you the basics. My dudes, this ain't it. So, it is what it is. I could sit here and make fun of it, but I'm not going to do that. Because it's pretty clear if they did actually, you know, have an outside company do this, that they didn't understand the game. Because they mentioned it on the dev stream, right? Oh, we're going to have another company do it because we're bad at math or something like that. They made a joke along those lines. But the fact is for the teacher quest, this wasn't good. No comprehension was transferred. There is never a circumstance where an enemy will not take damage if you're modded wrong. Like, there's no circumstance where the enemy won't be taking damage. Now, it's not going to be good damage. Actually, with one major exception, Profit Taker, but that's, I'm pretty sure we can ignore that for modding 101. Like, you're not going to talk about, like, what would be the equivalent of trig or calculus when you're supposed to be teaching like an algebra class or like pre-algebra, right? If you're giving people like, you know, basic x plus y equals 13 equations, you're not going to talk about derivatives. And it is kind of okay to, not bring it up or say like this is, that happens a lot where it's like, oh, this is how you mod, and then you come back later and go like, okay, well, this is how we told you how to mod. This is still true, but there are some exceptions. Here are the exceptions. Here's how you do it. You can do it like in multiple things. Like the teacher quest, I sincerely hope it's a multi-part series, and that really isn't just the entire thing. Like maybe this is all overblown, and this is just like the teacher quest one of like 15 or something, especially if they're going to go over like this super low pace, because they didn't talk about basics of modding. Like you really don't have that many choices. Actually, you know what, I could what's that weapon called? It's so unmemorable. Oh, it's the Thornback. Like this is like a more built out one I was messing around with. But like all they would have needed to have done would have just been like a serration, split chamber. Even though technically you wouldn't do this because it's a status weapon. Even if they had just shown this basic thing, it would have been better than what they had, because they just said, like, they just showed the drone, right, where it has the, oh, it like it only takes damage from electricity, and they messed with the damage numbers to make the effect greater. Like, please, somebody explain to me how, like, where you would hit something and it would cut your damage by 2/3, and then you add a 15% mod and then it quadruples your damage. Like somebody's gonna have to explain that to me. Like there's no combination where that occurs. Like that specific set of numbers. Like you can have like Guardian Eximus and like stuff like that, but that isn't how that combination works though. But like all they needed to do was just say this: like you're always gonna have multi-shot, for like 99% of the weapons, even on like status weapons, you're gonna have base damage, multi-shot, some form of fire rate, for like 99% of the weapons, and for most of them, you're gonna have crit chance, crit damage for your average crit multiplier. They could have breezed over it, right? Like at least these four. Like even on this weapon where it has super low crit chance, a lot of times I'll still run crit chance without crit damage just to help with headshots. Like you can make it work, but then you have to think in terms of play style. Like, okay, I need to lean into shooting the weak spots more, and I can't just bullet hose because it's a 15%. Like when it hits, I need it to hit hard. But you should be running like a proper status weighting, right? You know, you got your status damage, you got your Bane, base damage, multi-shot. We went with the good old magnetic electricity because we're shooting those. I was doing Orokin with a frame that could armor strip. It was a conjunction survival, and this did just fine. So it's just there are ways you can work it. They don't need to talk about all those interactions. But they could have done the 5 basic mods for a primary, the 5 basic stats you need to boost, and then they could have briefly mentioned like, oh, and give like arbitrary numbers, right? Because obviously with arcanes, like what counts as a status weapon nowadays, especially with primary crux, is things have changed. You could talk about like generic numbers where it's like, oh, like if a weapon has more than like 20% crit chance, you should try to mod for crit. If a weapon has more than like, I don't know, 18%, like what is it? What's the number even now with the galvanized mods? It used to be 18% with weeping, to get your statuses. on melees. But you have multi-shot on primaries, so the amount of status you can hit per second is way higher. Where on melee, you're relying on one hit. But so you have multi-shot, each bullet has the chance to proc a status. So you can stack statuses way easier. It's part of the reason why we prime with secondaries, right? But they could have talked about like generic numbers. They could have covered this stuff and made it like a really, really exhaustive, like at least describe what like a proper hybrid is. Where it's like, oh, a lot of weapons like are either crit focused, or they're crit focused, they're hybrids, or they're status focused. 99% of the weapons in Warframe are focused on one of those three things. Now, we also have a couple now, talking about glaives, where it's like you have like a forced proc, and you build around the forced proc. So you don't have, and that's the reason why they're so strong, like say like the Zoras, is it saves you the mod Weeping Wounds, and it frees up the slot to fit in a faction mod or status damage or something like that, or an additional crit damage mod or a Riven or something like that. Like, say with like forced statuses, like there's a lot of weapons with like a forced impact proc on it, like the Archiplasmor, for example, where there are mods like say internal bleeding. You would build around the internal bleeding proc. Or like the Kuva Shakur, you would build around the impact to slash with this mod. I mean, you don't have to, but it's definitely a build path. They could have skipped that and saved that for like the 102. But they didn't even mention these basic mods. Like, a player couldn't take the teacher, do the teacher quest, and then come out and then mod correctly. You know what I'm saying? So, rant over. It is not good. It did not mod, or it did not explain, it did not teach with the intention of the person doing the quest to comprehend what was going on. And that is a flat out failure of the quest. Now, it can be fixed. It can be fixed pretty easily. But a large portion of the quest line is going to have to be changed or outright thrown out. It's not good. It's frustrating. Because I've talked to a couple new bros where they're new to the game. Some of them are like coming over from Destiny 2, and it confuses them. I'd rather them be in a Discord call with me for 5 minutes, and I can help them mod, or even just like straight up text. Like if I just link this build and say, hey, this is your starting point. 99% of the weapons are going to use these base stats plus damage. Crit chance, crit damage to get your average critical multiplier up. Multi-shot and a fire rate. The top two mods, I always like doing this because it's easy to understand. And it's easy to keep clear. The top two are to deal with the defense of the enemy. And the bottom one is a dot. So these are going to be your 60/60s for the extra status chance. And this is going to be your 90 mod for whatever dot you want. It's not perfect in every situation. You're not always going to mod like that. But for 99% of the content, that suffices. Especially with how weak the enemies are. So it is a good basic starting point. It would be a safe place to tell a brand new player this is how you mod, and they didn't tell them. So it is what it is. But thank you guys for watching. If you made it this far, there were a lot of life events that, like I bought a house. It's part of the reason where there's a tiny bit of an echo. Is the room that I'm sitting in is I now have a computer room / office. And it has nothing in it besides a computer desk and my computer. So I gotta set myself up. But I I'm not going to be back on the grind with Warframe content, but I am going to be making Warframe content semi-regularly in sort of a hobby aspect. I have sort of slowed down on the clan. Like, we've really been trimming stuff off. Like, I'm not going to lie, the clan kind of died after 1999. People did not come back for that. It wasn't like Deviri. People didn't come back. So we started trimming people. I basically trained up 80 people, 90 people in a clan, and a lot of them left. So it is what it is. I will be making content, but it's going to be, honestly, it's going to be more stuff that I enjoy. So there's going to be more, and I will start answering questions more specifically from like YouTube comments. So if y'all got questions about stuff or like an explanation of what's going on with something, I will be glad to answer them. One, because I enjoy it, and two, because it's like a free video, I guess. But there's going to be a lot of things like team loadouts. Never really talked about them, but it's one of the things that, in terms of like on the channel, but it's going to be more stuff where it's like, oh, you want to do a disruption run as easy as possible, but you actually want to take advantage of team synergies. Like, that's the stuff that me and the people I play with enjoy doing, though it's mostly survivals. So it's like, we were messing around with Noko, and we had the little dumbass orb that he throws on his four going around and hitting damage cap, and like, we're getting our sentinels. Like, we literally came up with a loadout, like a team loadout, to boost the guy I was playing with, his sentinel, until it was hitting damage cap, like the sentinel. Like, that stuff's pretty fun to me. Like, you even had like some farms that were like the equivalent of like 10k plat, like every hour or two. But it also depends on how you got the plat. Like, you got to be patient, but the effectiveness, like, that's the stuff me and the people that I play with are doing. So I guess I'm going to start sharing some of that stuff. Because let me tell you, in the clan, not a lot of new bros anymore. So I'm not really answering questions. Some of the people, like, I got when they were like I'll even show you. Nobody harassed them. Like, we've got an MR20, and that's the lowest player. So most of, like, a lot of these guys, I picked up when they were like MR4, 5. Some of them came on later. Like, one guy in here has more hours than everybody else in the clan combined, like actually in mission time. And my Steam profile says like 13k or something like that, and he's at like 20k in mission, which is fucking insane. Jesus. So I'm probably going to start making that sort of content. At the same time, I'm not going to try to be like a weapon swap channel, where it's like simulacrum bullshit. I'm probably going to be talking about like interesting loadouts for like group play, because that's one of the things that I actually enjoy about this game. So it's going to be stuff like that. Like, what was it we were doing? Like, one of the things I'm probably going to make a video on is when Noko first came out, we were seeing how fast we could do like defense missions. And like 100-round defense mission in like 55 minutes probably deserves a video. Like, you can get some really, really insane clear speeds. And I think it would be interesting to share that stuff, especially because it requires us troubleshooting it. Though the principles are still the same from other speed clears, the interesting interactions, I think, would be worthy of sharing. And that's more stuff that I do in the game. And it'd be more, because there's a lot of people, like, even now, like on my builds for like most of my videos, most of my builds are completely and utterly independent of whatever the other 3 players you get in a pub group are doing. They're stable across the board. The weapons don't require priming. Like if you were doing like a shield gate setup, it didn't, but like you didn't have to rely on somebody else to shield gate for you. But to be honest, we're not really shield gating nowadays, are we? And even then, like even some basic stuff, like say you're still running a shield gate setup, you only need one. If you're in a group with 3 other people, so that's a 4-man, one person needs to bring the aura. The other 3 people don't all need to bring brief respite. Or if you want to run like a shield gate setup, and the shield, because you're not running, like you can't do like a decaying dragon key anymore. You just need to figure out the number of brief respites you need to take to still get your 1 cast shield gate. And the rest of them are free. But you can only do that when you play with other people. So there's a lot of like basic combinations where it's like a brief respite, a corrosive projection, crap, what's the shield one? Shield disruption? Yeah, so corrosive projection, shield disruption, brief respite, and like a worthy camaraderie. If you're playing with as a group of 4, that is a really good aura setup. You get a little bit of damage, you can deal with shields, you can deal with armor. Not that that matters too much nowadays. And you've got some shield generation. That used to be the first 3 without worthy camaraderie. That used to be the setup we would run across the board. When you would want to run like speed defense missions with the Corpus, you would want to stack shield disruptions. Because technically this is doing damage that scales with max shield. So if you're trying to do kills per minute, and you want to kill faster than each enemy faster than 1 second, you can't rely on toxin dots. So this becomes best in slot for one-shotting Corpus. But there's no videos and there's nobody talking about that stuff. So I think that's going to be the sort of interactions that I'm going to go toward, which is the stuff that I actually enjoy doing, and it's not so much informational. Again, if people have questions about a specific thing, like they're having trouble with a specific weapon, I'll answer that. But it's just, I think the channel's going to move over to stuff where as we work through problems and we come up with something interesting and we get something to work, like maybe we'll start putting videos out about that. So I think that's going to be the direction that the channel goes in. More team loadouts, or at least 2-mans. A lot of 2-mans. But 2-mans, 3-mans, that sort of thing. There'll probably be a lot of that. Because that's the stuff that I generally find interesting, just making it more enjoyable to play with friends. So anyway, that's the update at the end of the video. Wanted to say thank you all for watching this if you got all the way through. Plus the little thing at the end. Have a blessed day, guys. Thank you for watching if you got this far. Later.